Good morning. Thank you all for coming this morning. Realize it's not always easy on the freeway system. I'm Mike Kelly with Tactical Cloud. Before we start, I just want to get a chance. I know we're all coming to this meeting with different levels of background and experience with the cloud. So I want to take a second to kind of set the table, just kind of what's going on within the cloud community, why is it growing, and then we have three just awesome stories to be told. Each one of them comes with a little bit of a different story, but I think there's some really awesome common themes that hopefully everyone will enjoy. So with that, so real quick, who is Tactical Cloud? We are the largest implementer of NetSuite, Adaptive, and also Tactical Connect. So obviously NetSuite we'll talk a little bit about today is the fastest growing cloud ERP. Adaptive is more on the budgeting, forecasting, planning side, which is another phenomenal cloud tool. The Tactical Connect is actually our own business intelligence connector, which basically takes all of your live data from NetSuite directly into Qlik, Microsoft Power BI, and Tableau. So that's something we created actually because of clients keep asking about how do they get really involved, and all that great data you have within NetSuite, how they really get involved in the operational analysis and business intelligence, and there was no other tool out there. So real quick, just some of our clients that we've worked with here in the last 6 months or so, give you an idea. It really kind of speaks to where a lot of the cloud companies are moving to the cloud, the industries that really seem to blossom and do well. Obviously the technology area is one that does well, but really NetSuite and a lot of cloud companies do really well when you have a product or any sense of inventory. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but hopefully there's some familiar names as well. So why the cloud? Take a look at the next slide real quick. What's going on? If you take a look at where companies moving to the cloud are, the growth of the cloud, basically latest was 9 out of every 10 CFOs that make a decision as far as ERP choose the cloud. So there's got to be a reasoning to that, and we'll talk a lot about it from these three talented folks today. But it kind of tells you the trajectory of things. And a lot of folks, while they may want to move to the cloud, but the idea of getting off their legacy systems, there's a lot of paranoia around it. There's a lot of fear. So hopefully these guys will be able to tell some good stories about some good things that happen and kind of what you need to do to get prepared, to do your homework before. Because implementations are challenging, even when they go well. So the more thought, preparation you do before, the better off you'll be. Obviously, it comes down to money, right? So you guys and girls, most of you are accounting oriented. The reason why cloud computing is taking off for a lot of reasons starts with it's cheaper. And the reason why it's cheaper is not just because of all the IT folks and on-premise stuff you have to take care of, but also these guys and girls will talk to you about your ability to how you can use and harness the cloud for making real-time business decisions. As Josh Lasov used to say, it's all about the 3 M's. Josh, what are the 3 M's? Measure, monitor, and micromanage. Yes, that's what I do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. So the cloud. Why are people getting excited about the cloud? Why are people moving to the cloud? And it's really about these, what I call these pillars. One is, with the cloud, your ability to scale, to ramp, is limitless. It's not, I have to get another server. I've got to do all these certain things. Your ability, so you can grow very quickly. Obviously, for instance, even with NetSuite, we have so many clients that are under 50 million and doing business all over the world. Foreign currency consolidations. For instance, even NetSuite, I think it's 94 different languages. So you can have your folks in China who actually can work within NetSuite in their local currency and also the local dialect. Things like that are very powerful. Responsive to change. It makes sense, as we all know. Every day something's going on. You're opening up a company, you're opening up a subsidiary, you're opening up a product line, and a lot of times things have to happen very quickly. They're not going to wait for accounting 6 months to kind of get their act together. Talk about this. This is what I think is really exciting and we hear a lot about. It's really data, right? So NetSuite in particular, you have so much information. You have CRM data, supply chain data, inventory, sales analysis. Well, you have the information, and either can be any accountant that can report back. But the question is, for sales and ops and business, looking forward, what's going on? trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. So it really has given, I think, the Office of CFO a lot more power for kind of a seat at the table, because your ability to very quickly add value from an operational perspective. So you're seeing the CFO of the world having a lot bigger seat at the table and being able to be more part of key decisions, forward-looking, not just after. Then this is a little bit, we're full of our own stuff, but we really see, everyone's using the cloud, whether it's all the social media stuff, online banking. You rarely see any companies that are manufacturers of software building an on-premise solution. You have everyone either moving to the cloud, or anyone who's starting starting software companies now and think about applications are really starting on the cloud. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks everyone for coming. Thomas, can you hear me there in the back? Awesome. So I am Blake Oliver. I am a product marketing manager at FloQast. If you haven't heard of us, we are close management software created by accountants for accountants to help them close the books faster and more accurately. I myself am very passionate about cloud accounting. I've been calling myself a cloud accountant for about a decade now. Built and sold a cloud-based accounting business, and it's really interesting. So the firm that acquired my company in 2015, now it just itself got acquired by a top 51 accounting, well, it is number 51 on the top 100. So it got acquired itself, and so to me this is showing how this trend toward using cloud technology is percolating upward into bigger firms, into mid-market companies and the enterprise. So I'm very excited to hear what our featured speakers today have to say about that. So before we get to them, some housekeeping. There is one CPE credit offered for this morning, and please ask questions throughout. This is interactive. It's a long, narrow table, but it's still a round table in theory. So please, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll make sure to get that addressed right away. We'll also have an opportunity at the end to ask questions. We're going to go until about 9 with the panelists, and then we'll have a Q&A for about half an hour. Please, if you want that credit, fill out your course evaluation form that we've got at the front, and then CPE certificates will be sent by email after the event. Did I miss anything, Kat? We good? Awesome. Here's the learning objectives. This is for CPE, so I'm just going to skip through this. You know why you're here. Yeah. All right, so our first speaker is Blake Hacker of SmartLabs, and I think, Blake, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at SmartLabs and what SmartLabs is and what your team is like? And I think in particular, everyone's really interested to hear what their major cloud accounting tools are, so if you wouldn't mind sharing those as well.
So I'm Blake Hacker. I work for SmartLabs Inc. I'm the financial controller. Can't hear me? How about now? Okay. I'm the financial controller at SmartLabs Inc. We run basically two businesses out of SmartLabs. Our original core business was our smarthome.com site. It was more of a catalog-based business with a smart home focus. Early adopters, it's been around for about 20 years. It's one of the first e-commerce sites around. And a few years after that was started, the company developed what's called the Insteon technology. And that is a our proprietary smart home automation technology, primarily focused on like switches and nodes in your home that can talk to each other, automate your lighting systems and other systems within your home. So it was a very early adopter of smart home technology and IoT, and it has expanded into other products and product lines. Company was sitting on some old antiquated softwares, so last year we did some major upgrades along with an acquisition. So we switched off of an old accounting system called Acuity onto NetSuite. We updated our inventory replenishment system to something called NetStock. We are using Adaptive Insights for budgeting and planning, and there's a few other tools in there we'll probably talk about later. So.
All right, Danny.
Hi guys, I'll peek around the corner, I guess. My name's Danny. I'm the Senior Director of Operations at Sugarfina. Sugarfina is a candy company. We're a little over 5 years old now. It was started by a video game producer and the head of marketing for the Barbie line at Mattel on their third date. So they went and saw Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. They're both MBAs, said what happened to candy. It used to be this magical experience, and now you scoop gummy worms into a plastic sack. And so they did the very enviable job of traveling the world for 6 months, finding really high-end artisan candy makers all over the world. We have about 30 different vendors now. We bring all that candy back to the US, we repackage it under our brand, and we have 4 primary channels of business. The first was e-commerce. That's how the business started, and we now have 50 retail stores across North America. We do pretty significant wholesale volume as well, and then a lot of corporate and custom gifting, especially around the holidays. We do all of our repackaging in-house and fulfillment in-house as well. We have 3 different DCs, 2 in the US, 1 in Canada, and our corporate offices are just down the road in El Segundo. We were kind of born on the cloud in a way. Our first real system was NetSuite. Before that it was QuickBooks, Post-it notes, and some duct tape. So it was, as chaotic as a startup can be, in 5 years growing to where we've been now. So we're on NetSuite as our ERP and inventory control. We use Adaptive Insights for financial planning and budgeting. We have a cloud-based point of sale for our retail stores. We're on Magento for e-commerce. We use Velogix for inventory replenishment and forecasting. We use a tool called Buyer's Toolbox for top-down top-down inventory forecasting. There's a lot, and I'm sure there's some more in there that I'm forgetting, but we're heavy cloud users. Yeah.
Thanks, Danny. And last but not least, we got Amy Poole.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm the Senior Manager of Accounting at Thrive Market. What Thrive Market is an e-commerce retailer that basically sells what you can find on the shelves at Whole Foods at wholesale prices and delivers it to your door. We've been around about 4 years and brought our accounting team in-house about 2.5 years ago when I started, and built a team from there. Today we have about 13 people on the finance and accounting team. We're using NetSuite as our ERP system. We were using QuickBooks. And we implemented in August of 2016. We plug in everything that we can, Expensify, DocuPeek for AP, Magento for sales, HighJump for WMS system. The list goes on, and there's so many possibilities of what else we could also be using. We use FloQast for our month-end close checklist, which is much better than a Google Sheet.
Great to hear. All right, so first question, Blake, I'm going to pick on you. We share the name, so I felt that would be appropriate. So I think everyone is eager to hear, what is the impact of cloud accounting technology, right? Why are we going to all this trouble? ERP implementations can be a nightmare, as I'm sure some of you will share. So why go to that trouble? What's the impact been on your business?
Sure. So I've prepared some notes so I don't forget anything. We did about 10 core integrations. So we're on a Magento platform for our website. We integrated that with our ERP, so transaction flow is automatic. We reduced a lot of manual data entry from that respect, as well as we sell through other marketplaces like Amazon, Newegg, Sears.com. So we used a connector tool called FarApp to connect our Magento and all of those marketplaces. We also had some EDI feeds through what's called a company called B2B Gateway. Does our EDI connection through something called Commerce Hub for our for our Costco and Home Depot channels. We do a custom, it's a SFTP feed for EDI transactions. So our lease was up at our building. We had about a 30,000 square foot warehouse. We had to get out of the building. We were kind of struggling on, what do we do? And part of the switch to cloud and ERP helped facilitate that move, because we made the transfer to NetSuite, and then we were able to outsource our warehouse to a third-party logistics company, so a 3PL warehouse. And now that basically operates all of our transactions. So because we're cloud-based, we can push those files over the cloud through that SFTP file and basically send them the orders. They'll fulfill them, they'll send a file back, and that allows us to manage that in an automated fashion. Inventory replenishment is much faster, much better data. Adaptive insights for financial budgeting and planning, so we built in a lot of logic. If you're interested in that, talk to Josh, because he's the expert. And that has really streamlined our budgeting and planning process. We've been able to build logic into the cloud. You can push various sheets out to other individuals, so you can work on your budgets concurrently. You're not sending a million spreadsheets around and trying to figure out what's the latest version and who updated what last. Credit card processing integration and reconciliations. I built out a faster process to reconcile daily credit card batches. We moved our CS offshore, so they can actually log in to NetSuite from overseas, create cases. We got rid of our desk.com, and we use the case management software in NetSuite. Approvals and workflows, so we've got better visibility. Just processes and reporting. Built payments. I've built some custom fields onto our vendor records and onto our transaction records, so I can identify what the preferred method of payment is. I can filter payments by that method. If I need to print checks, if I need to process an ACH, I can look at them separately. Royalty reporting. We've got a handful of royalties. Used to take probably 2-3 days to do all the reporting. I can do all 3 of them or all 4 of them now in 20 to 30 minutes. Sales tax reporting, I built some custom reports from that. That used to take hours. Now it takes me maybe 15-20 minutes. Month-end close, I want to see FloQast, but I built some custom records into our NetSuite so that I could track and manage all of the periods and the subtasks within that. So I basically, I have some workflows built out that automatically create some extra records each month. So basically I say, I'm going to create a new period, all of my tasks automatically populate, they're assigned to an owner, and then I can track and manage and actually have automated emails go out to those people to remind them to get their stuff done. So it's cut down our people dramatically. Accounting used to be 6 people. I replaced basically the old controller and the CFO, and we lost a couple of other people. So now it's a team of 3 or 4. 3.5, doing everything, AR, AP, month-end close, financial reporting, all that. And if we need to scale, we can scale. Let's see, expense reporting, I've moved everything off of paper. Everything used to be paper-based. It's now, I've moved everything to electronic files. So everything is stored electronically. If we don't get sent an email by email, an invoice by email, I'll have my team scan it and attach it to the record. So if I'm reviewing checks or reviewing payments or whatever it is, I can click on the record and I can pull up the associated transactions. I'll have them attach emails or things of that nature, and workflow approval processes. So I can automate and route the approvals. Expense reporting, people in the field can log into the NetSuite app, take a picture of a receipt, and submit an expense report from their hotel room, and I'll see it pretty much right away, or their supervisor will see it to approve it, and then I can release it and pay it, or pay down the Amex card directly. So, yeah, tons of stuff. So, I mean, I could go on and on.
Well, I'm curious to know. So, you mentioned going from 6 down to 3.5, approximately, like full-time equivalents. So, have Amy and Danny, have you seen that happen? Are you cutting on your team, or what's the impact for you guys?
For us, we're not cutting employees. That would be the end goal, but at the moment we're just growing too much to keep up, and we're actually hiring more accountants just to keep up until we can automate everything. And by that I mean automate accounts payable. That takes a lot of manpower because it's so manual to code an invoice. The technology is, I just haven't found something that's there that can read an invoice accurately. But the end goal is to find something that will scan an invoice, input the coding, and then just have someone checking that and make sure it's routed to the correct approver.
Yeah, I guess we're in a similar boat. We haven't really cut, but what our cloud systems have enabled us to do is scale without adding people until December of last year. So I guess last year, for context, we did a little over 40 million in sales. We had 40-something retail stores by the end of that year. We were operating in 2 countries, and I was the only person in the company who was an admin in NetSuite, right? So to have a company that scale with over 400 employees operating in all those different channels and have a single person really driving all of that, it speaks to the ease of use that the cloud systems provide. I'm not an accountant. We have a whole separate accounting team, a separate controller, but the visibility that we have operationally to not just accounting data, but all data has been pretty remarkable considering the investment that we're making. It was just one person, now we're 2 people. So it's still a very lean team that can drive all that value.
Thanks, guys. So Amy, this question is for you. Was there anything in particular that led you to start implementing cloud technology? Any challenges that you were having that you were trying to solve?
Of course. Like I said, we used QuickBooks before, and with QuickBooks, as long as you had the password to log in, you could log in and make any journal entry you wanted. Obviously, there's a lack of controls. It's very hard to monitor who's making what entries, and in a growing company, a startup where there's so many things going on, you really need to have control of what's happening in your books. We implemented NetSuite to place controls, and we implemented FloQast in order to have a closed checklist where people were held accountable, because with QuickBooks, that was not happening. And our sign-off checklist in Google Sheets for month-end close was basically put an X if it's completed. Maybe it got reviewed, maybe it didn't. It was a busy time when we were using QuickBooks and trying to implement NetSuite at the same time, as well as growing. We went from about 5 million a month to currently 15 million a month in revenue, and we're still scaling. So just keeping up with the volume of transactions, going from a non-cloud-based system like QuickBooks where nothing plugged in. We had Bill.com plugged in for AP, and I would spend a day fixing sync errors because the period was locked. So that was a waste of my time. Now we can generate payments directly from NetSuite, upload those to the bank. It just makes everything a lot easier being in one system and being able to plug in everything to it.
Awesome. Either of you two, any problems that you were looking to solve when you made the switch? Well, you started on the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, we started on the cloud, but our problem was that we had no visibility to anything, ever, right? So we had no idea what inventory we had on hand, what our open order demand was, what inventory was coming into the company. We were closing the books 6 weeks later, and they weren't even at the channel level, right? It was just total company closing of the books. We had no visibility. We had no idea how the business was really doing at a granular level. We could just say, it feels good, but we have really no idea. So we were just trying to get just to a base level of visibility, and we've gotten a lot more than that.
Yeah, my first e-commerce company was growing quickly, and our QuickBooks was broken. Basically, once your QuickBooks file gets too big, even if you're on QuickBooks Enterprise, once it's over about 2 gigs, it crashes. And if you've got a crashed accounting system, basically you're dead in the water. So couldn't file taxes, couldn't do all kinds of stuff. No financial reporting, no visibility into the business. So once we got some of that cleaned up, started looking hard at systems. There's only 2 or 3 systems out there that are robust in the mid-market, and probably 1 or 2 that can actually handle inventory. So we landed on NetSuite, and that's where I kind of initially got my NetSuite experience, and was able to take that elsewhere, and I've done, I don't even know how many implementations now. So that's kind of what we were trying to fix. It's just problems with accounting, problems with visibility. The systems were just not robust enough to do what we needed them to.
I know that you started in the cloud. but you came from a very different environment previously, right? So what was that like for you making that transition?
Into Sugarfina. So I think I made this probably as big of a move as you can make. I grew up in Houston. My family was in the energy trading industry. I was interning at commodity funds and hedge funds. I thought I was going to do that route. Came out to LA, went to USC, loved LA, met my wife. She's born and raised here, so I was stuck here. Not a bad place to be stuck. And graduating college and looking at what was out there, not a lot of energy trading jobs in LA, right? So ended up at the power utility, Southern California Edison, a little over 14,000 employees. It's probably as close as you can get to government work without being a government employee. The entire business model was upside down. There was no profit motivation. It was just, okay, our profits are guaranteed. How do we mitigate risk and ensure delivery of the service? So really not the environment that I was looking for. I had met Josh when I was still at USC, the founder of Sugarfina. He was previously very successful in entrepreneurship. He started a video game production company called Pandemic Studios and sold it to EA for $890 million. So he did great. He was on a judge panel at a pitch competition. I got in touch with him and just stayed in touch. And a few years after I graduated, he and Rosie just started this company. They were looking for a finance intern, unpaid. And so they reached out, they said, hey Dan, you didn't graduate so long ago. Do you know anybody who'd want to be our unpaid finance intern? I said, yeah, I know, I'll ask around. And that week I was like, how do I have an unpaid internship and do my real job? Like, how can I work for this guy? They were thinking the same thing. Talked the next weekend, started 3 days later, took a 75% pay cut, showed up in their basement as employee 2. And since then, my first job was assemble my desk. No kidding. Right? So they had at least procured it from IKEA, but I had to put it together. And really could not have been a better experience for me. I consider it the MBA that I never got, right? Because I never wanted to leave, and I've learned more through that experience than I think I ever could have learned in a classroom. And yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
So we've heard about the benefits. Seems pretty clear, right? Going from 6 full-time equivalents to being able to do the same job and scale with 3.5, to be able to scale with, is it 2, Danny?
Now it's 2.
Now it's 2 people, but previously you were doing...
Until December last year.
Until December of last year, it was just 1 person. And Amy, how many people are on your team? Just
8.
8, okay. So, what I'm curious about is, as you made this journey, what are the lessons that you all learned, right? What were the biggest challenges you had, and if you could make a recommendation to anyone who's looking to get started, what would you say to them? So, Blake, I'm going to call on you.
All right. So, from my extensive implementation experience, I've got 10 for you. So, the first one is do your homework. Understand your requirements. Really know what you need and you don't need. Understand, like if you're picking a software, know its strengths and its weaknesses and its limitations, and really understand the all-in costs. If there's additional softwares that you need, if there's additional integrations that you need, if there's training, if you need consultants, how much can your team handle? Get referrals, talk to other customers and users and learn from them. That's huge. And if you're an established company, think about a lot of the little things. At SmartLabs, we've been around for 20 years. We've been on an old accounting software for over a decade. We have a pretty technical team, so there was a lot of customization in there, and a lot of things that people forgot about or were developed and people just didn't know they were there. And so when we switched over, there were things that used to be automated that they weren't happening, and nobody knew why, right? So I was able to catch them, or other people were able to catch some of those things, and we fixed them, and that was fine. Roles and access is huge, and addressing your shortfalls. But number 2 is I like to start from my end goals and work backwards. So I like to think about reporting and then work my way backwards. What do I really need at the end of the day, right? What kind of reports am I trying to generate? What kind of metrics am I trying to get? And then reverse engineer your system that way, especially if it's something like NetSuite that's highly customizable. Think about your end goal, because if you don't think about that, you're going to build everything and then you're not going to be able to get what you ultimately wanted anyway. Include your lowest level employees, right? The people doing the day-to-day job. those are the people who know the most about the job. And as a manager, you sometimes are blind to those, you forget about those. And I've seen so many executive teams that this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to do it. They don't talk to their teams, and they roll it out, and there's problems because you didn't think about the little things, right? And including people also gets them more involved in the process. Set realistic expectations. There is no magic button, there is no magic tool, right? It's having the right tools for the job, but they're still just a tool. So software is a tool. It is not the magic answer solution to everything. So set realistic expectations. What is it really going to do at the end of the day? It's not going to do everything, at least not right off the bat. Set hard deadlines for your implementation. It's real easy to, it's too busy to get that report out or to test those things or get that done, and that's how implementations get out of control, and they get extended and extended and extended. You hear about SAP. I've never heard of a good SAP implementation, and they usually take like 2 years. So if you want to get it done quickly, set hard deadlines. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. You don't need everything under the sun right away.
How do you keep it simple with, I think everybody has like a dozen apps they're using, right? So
I think you focus on the core need-to-haves and roll things out with what you really need. If you do a good, number one, do your homework, you'll know what you really need, and you can keep it simpler. You don't need all of the little things integrated and implemented right away. Get things rolled out and then optimize later. Right? Get the core stuff done and then optimize. That usually, it's an iterative process to fix it and clean it up anyway. It's not going to be perfect off the bat. So that goes back to kind of setting realistic expectations, right? Think about your cutover and have a plan for your GL and accounting, clean chart of accounts, how we're going to map stuff over, and have a champion. Have champions in every department. So have people that learn the software and know the software are going to drive that, right? They're going to teach their people, train the trainer. If you don't have that, you're going to struggle when you go live, or you're going to have to hire outside help that's going to blow your budget up, or increase your budget, or just budget that in early on to have those people available after you go live. And then test. So if you're doing lots of customization or coding or workflows or anything like that, test that stuff. Do a good UAT. I think the number one, so the next one I'm going to talk about is...
What's UAT?
User acceptance testing. So end users have to test everything, and you want to train them. So that's a good part of training, which is my last one. I think the most often neglected and just overlooked piece of a software implementation is training. And if your people aren't trained, they're not going to know how to use it right. I've got a team that I inherited an accounting team that knew nothing about accounting. So that was really challenging, but because I knew the system well, we were able to build things into the system to help either prevent issues or mitigate issues and keep things clean and flowing. And then I can train them along the way. So teaching them how to use the system properly and making sure you're setting up the system properly can help alleviate a lot of that. System controls are the best kind of controls, preventative controls. So those are mine.
Those were a lot of points, but I think he covered most of them. I would agree, test. Anytime you're adding software, if you're in NetSuite, use the sandbox and test it and make sure it works every single time. For me, it has not worked, and we found bugs or items that we need to fix that we didn't think about before actually testing it. Another key point that Blake said is ask people what their opinions of the software that you want to implement. Just reach out to your network and ask for real opinions, not the sales guy's opinions, because those aren't real opinions. You need someone that's actually using the system and understand what they struggle with or what they didn't struggle with, why they like it, why they want to use it. And that'll help you make a decision when there's so many options out there for different softwares and different cloud-based applications that you can use every day.
All great points. We had a terrible implementation. We bought NetSuite essentially January 1 of 2015, and original scope for us was let's bring over the line level history of the company from inception until then. So every item on every order, every transaction ever. And what's beautiful about NetSuite is that it's fully integrated. What sucks about NetSuite is that it's fully integrated, right? You can't just write something up and it doesn't work that way. And we didn't realize that until far too late, that just wasn't possible. It's not like we were coming from a robust legacy system, we were coming from nothing. And to recreate that history was impossible, but we realized that far too late. So we actually got towards Q3 of that year and decided to scrap the implementation, and we had to get something in place or we were gonna die in Q4. We just wouldn't survive. So we implemented a just purely inventory control system, amazed that it actually performed as well as it did for the next 6 months, re-implemented with opening balances as our scope the following year. We actually went live in Sandbox, which can tell you about how strapped we were for resources. But we made a lot of mistakes, and these guys have covered some of those, but I'll go through some of the ones that I added. Do one thing at a time. I think Blake mentioned this, but really focus on one thing at a time. Along those lines, your minimum viable product is your friend. If you don't need it, don't try to do it. Get something baseline, because if you don't, you'll have scope creep, and then all of a sudden a stakeholder wants something new, and because you haven't delivered the product yet, it's like, okay, well, the scope is still open to conversation because you haven't delivered anything. So really decide what you're gonna do and stick to that and get it done before you add new scope in. Can't stress this enough, get somebody with experience. I had no experience in NetSuite. Nobody in our company really did. And we also went the cheapest route possible for implementation. We worked with NetSuite Professional Services, which I've had hit or miss relationships with, but we went the full outsource route, so it was all overseas resources, nobody on site, nobody guiding us through this process, and we could have avoided a lot of mistakes if we had better invested in that implementation team. So get the right partner and make sure you invest. Along those lines, be honest with yourself. We were not honest with ourselves. I think we could have done a lot more self-reflection and realized up front that we were not equipped to really have this implementation go well. The scope is too large, the team was too small, and the experience level was too short. So try to be honest with yourself. Let's see. And then along the stakeholders you're involving, make sure they want to participate. Don't force it on people, because if you're forcing it on someone, they're not going to be an engaged partner in that implementation. So the people who came to us and said, yes, we want to be a part of this, were the best champions in their departments. The people who didn't volunteer, we said, hey, you have to do this, they were the worst champions in their departments. So make sure people actually have an interest in this. And then the last one is, if something is important enough to move the needle for your business, it's important enough to have it be someone's full-time job. So don't try to get somebody to have this be half their job and their day-to-day still exists. If you want to invest in this project, make it somebody's sole responsibility and let them focus on that. And then during training, train people on the how and the why, not just the what of they're doing. So they need to understand what's going on underneath, what are the implications of what they're doing and why it's working the way it is, so that they can start to build that context, and they'll make a lot better decisions moving forward.
Any questions so far? We got one in the back.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tim. I really appreciate your feedback and what you're sharing. I just have a question in terms of parallel testing. Did you do parallel testing, and if so, how many months did you do it?
So the question is, did you do any parallel testing? And if so, how long?
We define parallel testing.
How would you define parallel testing?
Use your existing system and the other new system that you're doing, and you compare the results.
So like QuickBooks and NetSuite in parallel for the same periods.
I've seen others do that. We did not. We did a hard cutover. What I've typically done in implementations is just do a hard close at the end of the month. I've had predecessors try to do mid-month, and that created a lot of a headache when we did it. I closed the books in one system and start everything new in the new system. And if you've done enough testing, it can be a fairly smooth transition.
We also did a hard cutover, and we went from 10 days close in QuickBooks to the first close in NetSuite took 25 days. So it was really rough. It wasn't perfect, but then we got a hold on it, and from there on out, we just worked on minimizing how long it took to close. There were a lot of kinks that we worked out in that first month, but we want to make sure that we got it right the first month. since we weren't running QuickBooks Parallel.
We had a different experience. I mean, we had nothing to parallel test in, so no. But you reminded me of something else that we learned is just launch it. It's never going to be perfect, so just realize when you've gotten to the point where it's your MVP, minimum viable product, and just turn the thing on. You'll figure it out. Like, your teams will figure it out. You'll make it happen. You can always go back and change things, but if you keep pushing to go live, it'll never go live. So that's the other thing that we learned.
So you sure it took 10 days, 25 days? How many months did it take for you to get back to 10 or less days?
I would say probably 2 to 3 months. And currently, we've been using NetSuite for probably the last 20 months, and it's down to 7 days.
Yeah, we had, after we went live, I was not part of I had helped with the implementation, but I was not actually full-time with the company when they went live, and I came in after the fact. Probably took us 60 days to probably close the first month, partially because it was a mid-month close, and it just created a lot of headache. Previously,
60 days?
the first time we closed in NetSuite probably took me about 60 days to clean up because there was issues with GL mapping and all kinds of stuff. We used to have like 200 to 300 accounts, and we consolidated it down into about 50. So there wasn't a good plan on the GL cutover from the accounting team. They just hadn't planned it out properly or well. So that created a lot of headache. Once I got it moving, though, we went from, prior to that, they were closing the books in about 20 to 25 days. I now close it in about 10 to 12 days.
And how many months did it take for you to get to that point?
Probably 3 to 4 months. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
This question. So Josh from Tactical Cloud. So you guys talked a lot about maybe reducing staff or some of the accounting department opportunities for optimization. But one of the things about NetSuite is it's this giant platform that has all your data, and all the data is kind of real time. What about prospective decision making or data-driven decision making? How has that changed and improved your guys' businesses from where you were, or what decisions are you making now that you couldn't have made previously?
So the question is, what about prospective decision making, looking forward?
So I think a lot of the reason we made the change to the cloud and to NetSuite was because of this, and also with adaptive planning for the budgeting purposes, was for that type of change, to run multiple scenarios, to run the analysis. I can tell you from a performance management perspective and in the accounting role, I've added a lot of custom fields and dates and things like that. I can run searches and reports to get certain KPIs. So I know how many bills were entered each week, each month. I know how many were exception POs or invoices. And I run those against industry standard benchmarks, to make sure that we're running around best in class. And I can see the volume flow increase and decrease, and I can hold people more accountable. There's a lot of other areas where we can kind of manage the business differently. I get better financial numbers. I can run them more cleanly, way more visibility in inventory. We had some not great inventory reporting, and I've really forced other teams to look at that now, and we're really cleaning up inventory, looking at turns, looking at gross margin return on investment, on-hand inventory, so way more visibility into the business. So I think there's a lot more that we can do from being proactive rather than reactive as a business.
I would agree with that, being more proactive instead of reactive. We've definitely climbed over that hill where we're not so reactive anymore and we can plan ahead. Right now, we're just focusing on one thing at a time. Our next items that we want to customize in NetSuite are introduce like a vendor portal that our vendors can log into and submit their invoices, as well as see open POs to see if we've received them at our warehouses. And then we're also implementing demand planning technology that will plug into NetSuite. So it's more of like looking at what else can we do to really leverage the ERP system and like how that can help scale the business as we continue to grow.
Yeah, so Josh, the prospective decision making was one of the 3 reasons why we wanted to go with a platform like NetSuite. I mentioned before the visibility that we didn't have, so it was definitely solving that. The other one was NetSuite I mentioned all those other tools we have. We started with just NetSuite. We added those in after the fact. And what I liked about NetSuite is that it does everything reasonably well. It does a lot of things pretty well. It might not be best in class at a specific function. That's why we use Adaptive. It might not be best in class at e-commerce. That's why we use Magento. But it does everything okay to the point where you can get to that MVP and actually start seeing value out of your system. So that was one thing. And then along those same lines, the flexibility. We were a tiny company when we bought NetSuite. We had no idea where the business was going to go. We needed a system that could stay flexible. And what we found is that the integration capabilities of NetSuite are incredibly robust, and we've never had a partner or a vendor or a third-party system that we couldn't connect to. We can get the data out of NetSuite very easily. NetSuite has a million tools to, without coding expertise, you can drive business process inside of NetSuite. The workflow engine is all visual. If you can, if you have if your team has the skill set to think about it in a process way, NetSuite can do it for you without writing a script. We have since written scripts for certain purposes, but you can get to a lot of value without any purely technical expertise, which is important for us.
I agree with all that. And then I'll just add, you can add like segmentation. So we used to have separate GL accounts for every department. So I'd have like an expenses account that hits engineering, and one that hits admin, and one that hits customer service. So in a cloud-based system like NetSuite, you can segment your data. So I only need one account, but I can code it as a particular department. I can code it by business unit. I can code it by order channel. So where did it come in from? So I've got like a lot more visibility into where are my orders coming from. I can run reports on geography. I can see, I've done some stuff to see how much is our proprietary product. How many orders have just proprietary product versus just third-party product versus a combination of both? Turns out it's 65. So there's a lot of things you can do to slice and dice the data and get better metrics out of your system.
Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Jocelyn. I talk to a lot of clients who are trying to decide what system to implement. Can you talk a little bit to how you picked NetSuite, kind of what your selection process looked like?
That's a great one. So how did you settle on NetSuite? And all 3 of you are on NetSuite. So what was it? Did you look at other options? And how did you make that choice?
Yeah, when I first got into NetSuite, I was looking at everything. So we were coming off QuickBooks. We were strapped for budget. I looked all over the marketplace. I tried to find e-com specific stuff that would plug in and do everything that we wanted from inventory planning. So Google searches left and right, talking to other people, talking to other businesses. There's other things out there, right? The only other option was like Sage 100 at the end of the day that could do a lot of what we wanted to do. And Sage 100, it's thin client server. It's not truly cloud-based, so you either have to own a server or rent a server or have somebody else manage it. There's also Intact, but Intact doesn't handle inventory, and Intact was also bought by Sage. So the only other stuff out there didn't really fit our needs. So there's really only in the mid-market, there are not a lot of options.
For me, it was decided before I started at Thrive Market, and I know that they picked NetSuite because of the way it can handle inventory. That's our main business, as well as how much you can customize it and the price point.
Yeah, we didn't really consider anything else. We had 9 people in the corporate staff at that time, so we just needed something. And our CFO at the time had used it at a prior company and spoke highly of it, and we just decided to move forward.
I know
Go ahead.
probably different for each of your companies, but how long did it take for you to implement your NetSuite?
How long was the NetSuite implementation?
First one took too long, and ultimately we didn't have buy-in from the executive team, so we actually we were financially strapped, and so my first implementation actually initially failed, and then went live later. My subsequent implementations typically take, depending on how complex it is, so my current company took about 6 months. I've seen it go faster than that for smaller companies. We've done some smaller ones more quickly, but I would say with NetSuite, you can do a pretty complex implementation in 6 months or less.
Our implementation was really rough. From the time we decided to get NetSuite, that was August in 2015. We wanted to go live January 1st, 2016. That didn't happen, and we went live in August 2016. And that was after trying to go live every single month. We were advised to bring in all of our old transactions from QuickBooks, which was a mistake. And every month that we pushed it out, our ERP manager at the time, every month that we pushed it out, we had more transactions to import and to fix within the system before it was ready to go live. And that was when we were really growing. So we went from 2 million in revenue to probably 7 or 8 million in revenue. So that's a lot of transactions every single month. And to get those ready by the 1st of the next month so that we can close, it just wasn't happening. And then we just set a deadline. We're going live August 1st. That's why it took so long to close. I don't think we were ready, but you're never going to be completely ready, so you just have to do it.
Yeah, so after blowing up our first implementation, we restarted in March. It took about 4 months. It really should have taken more like 6 months. We weren't really ready to turn it on, but we had to turn it on so that we could see what the actual problems were before the holidays came. And it was a relatively complex implementation for us. We assemble our own items, so we didn't even have our bill of materials defined for all of our assembly items. So we were kind of starting back from bare bones.
I'll say, if you're hearing a common theme, I think a lot of the pain points, my initial pain points on my first implementation were working with NetSuite Direct. It was a lot of overseas people. They didn't really understand accounting. They didn't understand what we were trying to do. I think one of the best ways to ensure you have a successful implementation is having somebody with a lot of knowledge or experience or the right partner. So like someone like Tactical Cloud or somebody that knows what they're doing, they've done it before. That will alleviate a lot of your pain points because they'll understand if you do a good planning process and doing your homework, during that process, they'll help you identify where are the shortcomings of the software, or what is the best way. Don't do it that way. Don't add historical transactions because that creates GL impact, and now there's no way you're going to get all of your detailed transaction data. So if you want that kind of reporting, you're going to have to plug it into a BI tool or something to look back legacy. So that's where I see a lot of people fail is either trying to do too much or trying to force the system. Right, the system's a tool. So find people that know the system and they can help you mold it around your business.
The other thing that really impacted us that I did mention earlier is not only were we implementing a software tool, we were deciding the business process at the same time. It's not like we were trying to execute a humming business process that we've been executing for months. We were at the table saying, okay, what do we want to, how do we want to handle expenses? How do we want to handle vendor payments? Not, this is how we handle vendor payments today. How do we do that in NetSuite, right? So we were defining our business process, implementing a software tool, and learning that software all at the same time with a purely overseas implementation team who, to give you an example, they would say, you have 4 options for how you want to execute this specific process. What do you want to do? And we're like, well, we don't know. What should we do? And they're like, well, you can do whatever you want. At the point where they say, okay, well, based on your business and what we know about the software and the weaknesses, we highly recommend you go with this one option because if you go with option 3, you're gonna have to have all these other suboptimal things that you have to do. So to have somebody who can actually recommend best practice, not just tell you what's possible, is super, super important.
I'll add to that too. We had an ERP administrator that led us down the wrong path completely, and we ended up having to have consultants come in and help us. We spent a ton of money with these consultants to get us back on track and to that go live date. We could have avoided that by getting the right person that knew what they were doing instead of just one area of NetSuite that they focused on, which was the vendor portal, which, like I said, we still don't have. So that was completely the wrong direction. And if we knew that, like, hindsight is 20/20. If we knew that now, we would have found the right person before moving forward with the implementation.
So all three of you had either incredibly difficult or failed implementations, but you do it again. Everyone, you're happy with where you are now. So that to me speaks to the power of the cloud, that people are willing to go through months of agony and still would do it again. But now you know, next time, right? We have, actually we just hit 9 a.m., so we've got space for another half hour. So please feel free to mingle and network and come talk to our guests. Thank you all so much. Let's see, before you all start chatting with each other, just wanted again to tell you a little bit about FloQast. We are close management software created by accountants for accountants. We help them close faster and more accurately. We've got about 400, actually over 400, mostly mid-market customers now. Some of those logos on there you may not be able to see: Grubhub, Zscaler, they have had a fantastic IPO that they did on FloQast. Zillow, DocuSign, Okta, Golden State Warriors, also the Lakers. A lot of fun companies using FloQast for their close. Two of our co-founders are former auditors. I'm an accountant. We've got accountants in every department in the company, which I think is what helps us make software that accountants actually want to use. So if you're interested in that, we've got the FloQast team here to talk. We're super excited to be partnered now with Tactical Cloud. So this was the first event of our new partnership. They're going to be implementing FloQast along with NetSuite, and we're very, very excited about that. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our guests.